budget coverage by crossing over to Parliament, where KTN's Abby Agina is on standby to give us the latest. Abby, it is budget day. A few minutes from now, we are going to be seeing CS Henry Rotich read out the budget to Kenyans. But what is big on members of Parliament's minds in regard to the expectations?
Well, thank you, Joy. It's indeed a big day here in Kenya, where a majority of the population are expecting this particular budget. It is one of the largest budgets in Kenya's history, standing at about 2.23 trillion Kenyan shillings. Not just a simple amount, it is the biggest in the region. And a lot of expectations around what tax and spend measures will the Cabinet Secretary be tabling to Parliament today, because Kenya, as you said there earlier on, Joy, we are really borrowing quite a lot when it comes to financing our development budget, and a good chunk of the taxes that are currently generated in the country are not sufficient to meet the budget requirements, which has seen the Kenya Revenue Authority miss out on its targets. But Joy, really to bring you up to speed on what's happening from this end, so far we are seeing members of Parliament making their way into the buildings, and some have already gone into the chambers. Of course, we also have senators coming in to take part in this particular budget, because it is under the committee of the whole House, which will be seeing the Treasury Cabinet Secretary, the Principal Secretary, as well as a number of other Cabinet Secretaries accompany Henry Rotich at about 2 p.m. to give Kenyans this particular budget. And joining me right now is the Senator for Nyamira County, who is with us this afternoon to just dissect and get some views from the Senate regarding the budget. Many thanks, Senator. Just quickly bring us your views regarding this year's budget.
First of all, good afternoon. You know, the issue of budget in Kenya is not really a new issue. My concern is that this has become a ritual which does not really affect the regional interests of Kenyans. For instance, the bureaucratic bottlenecks in the budget reading does not add up. You realize in subsequent, for the last 3-4 years, you've seen the Auditor General talking about wastage, for instance, of over 3 billions of shillings. Secondly, unspent monies. As we end this year, if you got the Auditor General's report, you'll find that almost over 400 billion is unspent, lying on in ministries. So in essence, even if you talk about a budget of 2 trillion, to me it's a ritual which does not really reflect the interests of a common man.
All right.
The way forward should be then, in realigning ourselves to devolution, as we intend even to amend the constitutions, we need to figure about the import of this budget cycle.
And Senator Mongare, of course, a lot has come across when it comes to spending and borrowing. What are your views around how Kenya is borrowing right now? We're talking about having debt close to 3.2 trillion shillings that has been accumulated over the years.
That's a very interesting point, because you realize that even an unborn child is owing money to our borrowers. But the beauty of it is that Kenya is a growing economy. We have now many untapped resources, which we are really looking if they are tapped properly, for the oil reserves we are having, the mineral reserves we are having. If we can kill the monster of corruption, the issue of debt cannot be an issue.
What is the one thing, lastly, that you are expecting from today's budget speech?
Nothing much of essence, but is Kenyans, I waited with an abated breath. If the essential commodities are not touched, then that's what I expect Rotich to touch on, which affects the common man. If that is not touched, then we have not done nothing much for the interests of Kenyans.
Many thanks there, Senator for Nyamira County, Ken Mongare, speaking to us regarding the budget highlights. Well, Joy, that's the mood here in Parliament. A number of divergent views coming through from both the pro-government and the anti-establishment, trying to come to a common ground, saying the essential goods, that is the basic commodities that Kenyans do use in their day-to-day basis, should not attract so much taxes, because this is an area that touches on many livelihoods. Joy, I don't know if you have anything else to ask from this end, Joy.
Well, yes, indeed. Quite a number of questions being raised as well. Surprising that the senator says he doesn't expect any surprises, but higher taxes is a surprise this time round. And of course, there has been a bit of wasteful spending, both at the county level and the national government level. And President Uhuru Kenyatta has come out to caution leaders as well on wasteful spending. But what are the responses from the members of parliament you have spoken to in regard to this wasteful spending? Abi?
Indeed, quite a huge question you've asked there, Joy. Wasteful spending is seeing Kenya lose about 30% of its budget year on year. This translates to about 600 billion shillings. Mm-hmm. If you further look at what 600 billion shillings can do, it can actually construct about 30 thicker super highways. That is, to put it into perspective. So majority of the leaders are saying that issues around pilferage in government offices needs to be addressed, and this stems down to the issues of procurement, where we are seeing a number of government counties especially are not really abiding to the set out procurement regulations by the government, something which the Treasury Cabinet Secretary will be making mention of in this presentation this afternoon, because wasteful spending indeed has cost the taxpayers billions of shillings that have really gone down the drain that cannot be accounted for. So this is an area a lot of leaders will be expecting drastic measures to be taken by the CS in terms of tackling this issue and nipping it at the bud, Joy.
Well, and finally, Abby, there has been a push for counties to generate their own income because what we see is that every time money is allocated to the counties, it takes 3 months before they can access this money from the National Treasury. And this has sort of delayed some of the infrastructure projects or development projects they have been having in the counties. So how exactly do they plan on implementing this?
Well, the issue around the counties and how much they receive is, of course, a contentious issue. Actually, governors have raised the red flag, saying they have been having quite a lot of challenges when it comes to disbursement of funds. And on the other hand, we are seeing a situation where they would like to see counties start generating more revenue so as to finance their recurrent and their development budgets. As we speak right now, close to 70% of county budgets go towards paying salaries and also paying rent and other issues around just financing county operations, purchasing vehicles, purchasing medical equipment. And it's not a question of how much you're spending on salaries. It's a question of how can counties be further empowered to generate more revenue. That is one of the measures we'll be hoping to see if the CS will touch on this afternoon when he makes his speech. Of course, I might bring in once again Senator to just get your views around counties and how they have failed on raising revenues for them to run their operations.
The biggest problem we are having is that when I sit in the Public Accounts Committee of the Senate, when you look at their books, you realize that the collection of revenue is lower than the defunct local authorities. Then we realize, as you say, there's a lot of privilege, there's a lot of theft in those units, the devolved units. Though we have issues as a Senate with the national government. You know, the national government keeps 85% of the budget in national government, but they don't talk about devolved functions. They only send money. We are fighting to move to almost 45% to devolved funds, but we are telling governors that they must account for the little they've gotten. The biggest problem we're having is theft and privilege of those resources. But as we move gradually, all those loopholes, if they are sealed, will be in order.
Mm-hmm. So lastly, why are counties not raising this revenue as required? Because look at counties that are in the coastal belt, counties in the sugar belt in Western Kenya, counties that lie in mineral-rich areas. They are still relying on national government for a huge bulk of their funding.
The argument is that initially they were laying foundations, for instance, infrastructure for those mechanisms to work. But as I have told you, that where I sit as a member of the Public Accounts Committee of the Senate, we've realized even some governors are not very keen to tap that revenue at the local levels. Because, for instance, if you find the governor of Nairobi telling you that he raises lesser monies in terms of revenue other than what the defunct local authorities, which didn't have capacity, which didn't have personnel, then there's something which is amiss. Mm-hmm. That is issues we need to be addressed by all leaders and governments, especially the EACC and corruption bodies need to move in, and so that all those who are culpable can be held accountable.
Thank you very much, Senator there. Well, Joy, you've heard it from the horse's mouth. And of course, we'll be speaking to all the leaders that we'll be able to get this afternoon before the budget statement kicks off from this side, Joy. We now hand you back to studio. We'll be giving you a wall-to-wall coverage from Parliament buildings. We do have a team of reporters here. Of course, we do have Philip Kitani also with us. He'll be giving us perspectives on what we expect on the agricultural front. And Joy, what do you have lined up else?